Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be going through the 10 series that I would like to prioritise in 2024. This is a follow-on to the series, to the video that I made last week talking about series that I finished last year. So if you haven't checked that out yet, then I'll leave it linked in the cards and in the description. I'm struggling to speak today, but I'm going to carry on because this is like the third time that I've attempted to start the intro to this video. Is going to be chaotic. I have made variations of this video in the past. I think I actually skipped a year last year though because I was trying to play catch up. But if you want to see those videos, then I'll also have those linked in the description. I actually own all of these series either physically or on my Kindle, so there's no excuse. I need to prioritise these this year. I have decided that 2024 is going to be the year of making progress in series, so hopefully that does actually happen. I am going to kick things off with the books that I own on my Kindle so I don't forget them. First on my list is the Rook and Rose trilogy by MA Carrick, the first book being The Mask of Mirrors, which I have had on my Kindle for a while, but this series is now complete. I think the last book came out last year, so it would be good to marathon this series. I have a feeling that it's going to really work for me. The synopsis sounds just really something that I would be interested in. It follows a con artist who is trying to trick her way into a noble family to secure her fortune and her sister's future. So it sounds like it might have a complicated sister relationship. I don't know if the relationship is actually going to be complicated, but I love sister relationships in books because I have sisters, so it's something that I enjoy reading about. And yeah, I've heard really good things about this. I've heard it has amazing atmosphere and that the setting is kind of inspired by Venice, or it's like an Italian inspired setting, and again that's something that really appeals to me. It's also meant to be quite political, and that's my favourite type of fantasy, so I'm hoping I can pick this one up very soon. Next up we have The Radiant Empire Duology by Shelley Parker-Chan. Book 1 is She Who Became the Sun, which I again have had on my Kindle for the longest time, pretty much since it came out, because I can remember there being a lot of hype around this book at the time of release, and yeah, it sounds like something that I would enjoy because it's more historical, I think, than fantasy. I believe this follows a main character whose brother is prophesized for greatness. However, he dies near the start of the book and she decides to take on his identity and try and live out that prophecy. Really excited for this one. I heard some people were disappointed because it does lean more historical than fantasy, but that's not something that's going to bother me personally. Next up we have the Earthseed duology by Octavia E Butler, which I've just realised is I think the only series on this list that I don't actually own, so I lied to you earlier. But this is available through Scribd, which isn't called Scribd anymore, it's now called Everend, but the audiobooks are available on there, or they were the last time I looked. Hopefully that's still the case. I really enjoyed Kindred by Octavia E Butler, and I've been meaning to pick up more of her works. This, I think, was published in the 90s, but it's set in 2024, so this year, but it's like a dystopian story. I'm expecting it to be quite hard-hitting and to have some darker themes, but I think it would be really interesting to read a book that was published 30 years ago, but that's set in what's now the present day. A YA series on my list is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. So I actually own this duology. You're going to see quite a few duologies appear on this list because I have a fear of commitment when it comes to series, but this I bought when it came out, and then I also own the sequel, which is here. I don't know if you can see that, but this was a cover buy. I love this cover. I'll hold it up so you can see it a bit closer, but this, I think it's a retelling. It follows a princess who has forbidden magic running through her veins, and apparently she loses control of this magic and she's banished, but also her brothers are turned into cranes. So it's about this main character searching for her brothers, and and uncovering a dark conspiracy to seize the throne. So yeah, hoping to like this. I have heard good things, and I'm gonna save this for when I'm in the mood for a YA fantasy, because sometimes I just don't want to pick up something that's going to be super dark. I don't know if that's going to be the case with this book, but I do find YA fantasy much more digestible. Next on my list is The Darker Shade of Magic trilogy by V. Schwab, which I've just realised isn't actually a trilogy anymore because there was a fourth book that came out last year. But I actually read this first book a few years ago. I read it for a readathon, so I know it wouldn't take much for me to reread this first book and then finally continue with the series, because I read it so quickly the first time around, and I remember really liking the world in this. It's set in a world where there are all of these parallel Londons. So there's one London that's basically our world. There's another London where magic is thriving, another London where magic is slowly dying and has become out of control, and there's a final London where magic is dead. This actually follows one of the few people who can travel between these different parallel Londons, and the story begins when he takes an item from one London to another. That's really all I can say about the plot, but yeah, excited to finally hopefully continue this series because I do remember enjoying this first book. These next few series on my list I am actually hoping to start in February. I put some of them on my February TBR, so by the time this video goes live I might have made some progress with them. But first up we have The Altas Six by Olivie Blake. This was originally self-published, but then it was picked up by a traditional publisher, and I heard so much hype around this first book when it came out, but I haven't heard anything really about books 2 and 3. It's understandable with book 3 because it literally came out in January, but I do want to give this series a try and see if it's my kind of thing, because I need to know if I should buy book 3 and add it to my collection. But this is a dark academia fantasy. It follows 6 magicians who are all competing to become part of the Alexandrian Society. I've heard it's really character driven, which does make me nervous because I'm not always the biggest fan of character driven fantasy, but I'm hoping the atmosphere and the plot or the vibes win me over. Next up we have The Great Cities Duology by NK Jemison. The first book is The City We Became, which is set in New York, and at the time this video goes live I'll either be in New York or I'll already be back from New York. I'm pre-filming a load of videos before I go, so I'm not sure what order they're going to be going out in, but I want to read this while I'm in New York because it's set in New York. I believe it's set in a world where cities have souls, and New York has 5 souls, and we follow 5 New Yorkers who have to come together to defend their city. I think this is going to be one of those books or one of those series where there's not much plot, but there's a lot of world building, and that's something that I really enjoy in fantasy. I loved the Broken Earth trilogy by NK Jemison, and I'm hoping this is also going to be a 5 stars. I keep running out of space on my memory card, so apologies if the camera angle has changed slightly, but we only have a few more series to go through. The first of which is the Fitz and the Fool trilogy by Hobb. I've actually already started this first book, Fool's Assassin. I am less than 100 pages from the end. I don't know if you're going to be able to see my bookmark, but I have almost finished this book and I'm obsessed. I think that's the beauty of character-driven series, is that you can pick up a book within the series even when it's been months or years since you read the previous book, because there's not really much plot, and if you do feel connected to the characters or if you do feel invested in the characters, then it doesn't really matter if you don't remember all of the details to do with the plot, because you're reading it for the characters anyway. Based on how much I've enjoyed this first book, I will definitely be adding book 2 to my March TBR, and possibly even book 3. These are chunky books, so I'll see how I get on, but I did not see this coming. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Farsi trilogy, which is the first trilogy within this universe, but Hobb has won me over, and this is on track to become a favourite all-time series of mine. This next series I am a little bit embarrassed about because I've owned it since 2020 and I still still haven't read past the first book, you might even be able to guess what series I'm talking about, because I feel like I talk about this series all the time and how I need to finally finish it or continue it. I'm not going to read the whole series this year, I don't think, because some of the books are quite chunky, but I would like to make decent progress on Throne of Glass this year. I need to reread this first book and refresh my memory, because I'm sure I've forgotten most of what happened. I think the problem is that I read this first book and I was a little underwhelmed. I thought it was just okay. I gave it like a 3 or a 3.5 stars, but I have heard that it gets better the further that you get into the series. So I'd like to give it a go. I want to get to the point where I feel like I'm hooked, if that point ever happens. This first book follows an assassin called Selena Sardathian, is that how you pronounce her name? And she is taking part in this tournament representing the prince to become an assassin for the royal family. Hopefully I can make progress with this in 2024. Chloe from Chloe Reads Books is actually doing a read along for this series at the moment, so I'm hoping to use that as motivation. I missed the first live show because I hadn't reread this in time, but I'm hoping to read this and also Crown of Midnight in time for the next live show. The final series that I wanted to mention, even though I did read it in January, is The Nightborn Duet by Carrissa Broadbent, which is part of the Crowns of Nyaxia. The first book is Serpent and the Wings of Night, and my original plan was to read the first book in January and then continue with the second book at some point later this year, but I became obsessed. So I did read both books and also the novella in January, and I loved this series. It's a fantasy romance series about a human girl, or a human woman, she's in her 20s, and she was raised by the Vampire King in the vampire court. And in the first book, she's taking part in a series of trials because the winner is granted one wish by the goddess of death. It is quite plot driven, but there's also a slow burn romance, which I really appreciated, and I thought the characters had great chemistry. This world was also a lot more brutal than I was expecting. It's definitely adult fantasy. The second book then became more political, and it showed the tension between the various vampire houses, and I just thought this series was great. It wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for me. Even though this story does wrap up within this first duology, I know that there's going to be other books within this world. I think there's 6 planned books in total. I'm not sure when the next one is coming out though. I don't think there's a release date yet, but if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments, because I need more Carrissa Broadbent in my life. I was really tempted to add her other series to this list instead, but I didn't want to push myself too much. So if I do end up reading that, then we'll just see it as a nice bonus. That does bring me to the end of this video though, so thank you for watching if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these series or what series are on your priority list for 2024. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.